All right, so let's take a look at how we would use JAXB to write several pieces of information, right? Not just one single object, but maybe an array or a list of elements, right, of objects that might be in memory. So for instance, consider here a section that might contain multiple students, right? So in Java, the way you would model this perhaps is that you would have a class section that contains some collection of students. This might be an array, it could be a list, an array list. Here it's just a generic collection. And you would have the setters and getters that would allow you to either add all the students in a bulk or retrieve the students as a list. Additionally, you would have you would definitely have a student, right? Which we do, right? We already saw an example of creating a student here, right? We use a student. We have already annotated it using root element and the attribute and the element first name and last name. We're not going to use that same student. We're going to use that student inside of a parent, right? That is going to keep track of a list or several students, right? And we're going to call it a section. So this is typically going to be represented in an XML document as nested elements, right? So again, a very, very different way of representing it in relational databases, representing it in Java classes, representing it in XML. Typically, in relational databases, this would be represented as two different tables, right? And you would have the child students having a foreign key to the parent section. In Java, the way you represent it is not two different tables, but two different classes. Okay, but the parent, right, can you don't have the children having references back to the parent. Instead, you have the parent section having an array or a collection of references to its children. So it's slightly different, right? The way the referencing works. In XML, it's entirely different. The way you would implement it. It would not be different tables, right? It would not be references. Instead, it lives all in a single XML document, and the fact that it's a one-to-many relationship of a one parent, multiple children, is captured by actually embedding the children inside of its parent. Right. So, for instance, the parent section here also is being annotated as a root element, and the students, right? That the setter that is used for setting the collection of students is being annotated as an element, meaning there's going to be a students, right, element or several of them, right, that are going to be representing all the students within that section. So same thing, right? We're going to use a JAXB context for representing the CRUD operations. In this case, we're going to marshal not a single student, but a collection of students, right? And we're going to write an entire section into the XML document, right? We're going to marshal the section containing multiple students into an XML file. So here's the section and the name of the students written out. We have here the outer parent section root, and then each one of the student instances being written out as a separate XML elements that represent each one of the students. Right. One thing to point out: notice that the name of the root, right, is based on the name of the class. Right. Very, very much like in JPA. If you remember, the name of the tables that are generated in MySQL are based off of the name of the class, right? Same thing here. The name of the root element is based off of the name of the class section, and so you have section. And whereas since section contains an array of since section contains an array of students, and the name of the field is called students, plural, right? It's using that as the name of the embedded elements, right? Here as students, plural. You can override that. You can override. So, for instance, in XML elements, you can provide an optional name for the node that you want to use, or the name of the elements that you want to use. So for instance, you might decide that actually the plural here of students actually makes no sense, right? That this should be instead a singular student, right, and not use the plural. And again, there's different naming conventions, whether you're storing this in a relational database, or you're storing this in a Java data model, or here in an XML element, right? So in here, it would make sense to rename this element and use name equal student, right? Instead of using the default students. All right, so the output would be this XML document. Here we have another example on how you would do maybe a collection of movies, but that I'll leave up to you to play around with.